Yes, very many.
Je suppose que tout cela te rappelle des choses. First of all, it's a great time here to see all your three here in Calais about laser, because in 1988, in May 88, laser was won, and a famous day, a very funny day on the air, and after, laser disappeared. But apparently the spirit is not disappeared, and François had the idea to organize this day especially for laser. And the first idea we have is to have guests who can have a recreation of laser. And immediately three names arrived, and it was yours, and you are here. Thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yes.
So, my first question is not very original, but so many years after, we are still speaking about laser. What is your first idea about that?
Gosh.
We coming down on the train today, at least, if you think about it, 16 years, which is a considerable chunk of time since we launched. And because some things in all of our lives become more important for whatever reason. I said, guys, it felt like 16 months ago that we came off the boat. We've all gone on and done different things. I've become a foreign correspondent. I've traveled throughout Europe covering big stories, etc. But if I think back for a point in time, the excitement of laser cannot be really duplicated in any shape or form. It doesn't mean that I think it can happen again today, but it was for that particular slice in time, that moment, it was important for me. I think certainly for John, for Charlie, I'll let them speak for himself. Trying to put it in context, I still have this today, some artwork that a listener, sometime probably early 1985, sent to me out on the ship. And if you know these tacky little souvenirs you get with a little cityscape in it, with the snow, and you turn it upside down, those things, some listener did beautiful artwork and had the ship in one of these snowscapes. And you flip it over on the back, and it said, "Enjoy the moment, because I know from past experience, this project is going to come to an end. Something will happen." And she inferred that, it's going to run out of money, it's going to sink, something's going to happen, because these things don't last forever. But she said, enjoy this, enjoy the moment. And we're enjoying the moment now, 16 years later. There are some things we take with us. The time goes by, you remember the good times, until we saw the Eurosiege take out. The gut-wrenching, nervous, ulcer-ridden times that we lived through, I've really kind of put in the back of my mind. But it was good times, it was bad times, but it was exciting times. We are all different because of that experience, changed forevermore. And that's not just saying that, I think it's true certainly for all of us. That it shaped us and it changed us on our course in life. And it's a great old ship. I know it's going through some problems now in Holland, but it's been through some scrapes itself, and I'm sure it will work through the coming years in some way. Maybe somebody else will get a hold of it. I don't think it's going to be flying a flag out in the North Sea again, but it deserves to maybe be a museum or something. But it's great, and coming back, all the images are happening as if they happened yesterday. And thanks for inviting us, and it's great to be here. Charlie.
Thank you.
Sorry, a few words in French for the translation.
Okay.
Sorry. Excuse me. Quelques mots de traduction. Donc ma première question était, on l'a invité 16 ans après que laser se soit arrêté. Quels sont tous leurs sentiments, quelles sont leurs impressions de reparler de laser après tout ce temps-là? Et l'idée force, c'est le souvenir formidable de l'empreinte que laser a laissé sur eux. Sauf que quand ils l'ont revu apparemment, enfin quand Tommy a revu tout à l'heure des images de Rosiège, ça l'a un petit peu rappelé de plus mauvais souvenirs. Mais en général, il est très très content de ce qu'ils ont fait et il est aussi très très content d'être ici ce soir avec vous.
What he said was, for those who don't speak French, was don't pay attention to anything Tommy said. Charlie has the real story.
N'écoutez pas tout ce qu'il dit lui, c'est lui qui dit la vérité.
Yeah, you know, I must admit, over the years, I can't say I've been a member of the free radio cause. I mean, I don't really read the magazines, I don't keep up with it. But at the same time, it really has been special so far today to relive some of these moments and also to hear people who've been talking about these different projects and the love that you folks have for free radio and for, let's say, preserving the light ships and things like that. I mean, it is a part of the history here. Not just laser and our ship. Like Tommy said, it wouldn't be nice to stay and have a nice home, but you think back to stuff even predating us that we really couldn't have experienced, like RNI and Big L and things like that. And yeah, Tommy's right. I mean, it was something that we will never ever do again in our time. I mean, probably have come close. I actually, funny enough, I always call it the best radio and the worst radio I've ever done. And was probably the best and the worst time of my life, very easily. But I remember soon after leaving Lazy, and I was back in the States for a while, and there was a girl that read news at this radio station I worked for, and she was more impressed than anything by the fact that I had been in Melody Maker, because that was something she knew about. I was like, wow, like Melody Maker was the holy grail. I was like, you've been in Melody Maker. But she said to me one day, she says, I can't believe you're still in radio. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, she says, this is like Led Zeppelin and you've just written Stairway to Heaven. What are you going to do next? And so, and yeah, I keep on trying, and I think one of the reasons I stay here, because people sometimes do ask, they go, you've been in Britain for 15 years, why? You could go work in the States, but there's a couple reasons. One, Britain appreciated what I did, and I shouldn't say just Britain, but obviously this side of the channel as well, appreciated what I did, and we actually changed the face of radio. And to me, that's pretty astonishing. I mean, I always hoped that I was going to do something important in radio, but I didn't think I was going to actually help change the face of radio. I mean, Johnny Bierling at Radio 1 said that to me once. He says, yeah, it was because of you guys that, we caused the actual physical changing of Capital and Radio 1. We kicked them in the backside. And it would be nice to kick them in the backside again because they really do need it. But I leave that battle to somebody else. And radio has progressed, but it's gotten stale again. We were discussing this on the train on the way down, and disc jockeys who don't respect the music, they'll cut off songs and they'll talk all over songs, and they don't know how to relate. And now, just to update you on what I'm doing, I'm working on Talk Sport in London, so I'm having a good old time slagging off music radio because I don't listen to it. I find it boring. Better music mix and things like that. I find that talk is getting closer to what I did on Laser in its own sort of way. It wants my personality, it wants my opinions, it wants me to wind people up. So I'm sort of enjoying this little adventure I'm now in radio, and who knows what's next. But yeah, it's great to be here today. It's great to relive memories. We were, watching these different tapes, and I can't believe I dressed the way I did back then. I looked like disco boy. And the other thing, the first thing that sort of caught my eye and caught my attention Oh, you want to translate?
Your time is finished now.
Oh. It has been a minute. We're back to the music.
Never a minute away from you. Ok, je vais essayer de traduire, je vais traduire plutôt résumer tout ce qui a été dit. Également du côté de Charlie, un très grand plaisir d'être là. Alors bon, plusieurs choses ont été dites, je vais essayer de remettre plus ou moins dans l'ordre. Ça a été un très grand moment pour lui, ça a été aussi un très grand moment de pouvoir botter un peu les fesses de la radio à cette époque-là. Il a d'ailleurs ajouté qu'il aimerait bien remettre un peu ça, ça en aurait besoin à nouveau maintenant. J'essaie de faire un résumé très rapide de tout ce qui a été dit. Il déplore également que l'esprit actuellement sur les radios qui sont, comment traduire le terme qu'il a utilisé, chiantes. Il déplore que les disjockeys ne respectent pas la musique, ne respectent pas les formats, ne respectent pas les auditeurs. Et il a également insisté sur le fait qu'il n'est pas un habitué des réunions d'Anora, qu'il ne lit pas la presse, il ne se tient pas informé du monde de la radio libre, etc. Mais il est très reconnaissant, je pense que c'est le terme qui est utilisé, par rapport à ce qui est fait par des gens comme nous et les autres. Ce que fait John Platt pour maintenir en état certains navires, entretenir toute la mémoire sur les navires, sur les radios offshore. Donc voilà ce qu'il a voulu dans un premier temps donner. Chris? John?
Your turn. I joined Laser 558 after it had been on the air for a couple of weeks, but it was already clear that we had no idea what we were doing, and I was allowed to go out for what was intended to be a month's study of what the problems were. And I was able to identify that we had 5 people who each thought they were in charge of the entire station, and none of those 5 people had ever run a radio station. As a result, I volunteered to do that, and embarked on the most amazing adventure of my career, which had prior to that been running radio stations in the United States. Since then, I've run radio stations or consulted radio stations in Ireland and Luxembourg and Russia and Eastern Europe, and still nothing quite measures up to the excitement of having to bring the records and the food and the water and the fuel out to the ship on tender boats, and wonder whether or not we're going to last through another storm. Thanks.
Thank you. En titre d'introduction, il s'est présenté en disant que s'il est arrivé sur laser, donc là, de façon à être clair, il s'agit évidemment pas d'un disjockey, mais de la personne qui s'occupait de la station depuis les États-Unis, depuis la Terre. On lui a donc demandé d'aller voir ce qui se passait à bord, et quand il s'est retrouvé à bord, il s'est aperçu que cette station tournait avec 5 personnes, et que ces 5 personnes faisaient tout. Et ça a été l'un des points de son départ professionnel. Depuis, il a organisé et lancé des stations, il a donné l'ensemble des pays à travers le monde entier. Je crois qu'on peut quand même donner un nom par rapport à la carrière de John, ajouter un nom à celui de Laser. C'est également l'homme qui a lancé l'Atlantic 252, ce qui fait quand même une méchante carte de visite.
John, first thing first, how did you actually come to get involved with Laser? Did you approach them or did they approach you?
Alors, comment es-tu arrivé précisément à Laser? Est-ce qu'ils t'ont approché ou est-ce que c'est toi qui les as approchés?
I worked at a radio sales company with a young man in the late 70s whose wife was an artist, and I was following her career and went to see a show where she was demonstrating some of her new paintings, and he told me about a project he was working on to develop sales presentation materials for a radio station in Europe called Laser 730 at that point. He introduced me to Roy Lindow, the sales manager in New York, and it was through those connections that I was invited to come over and give them what was intended to be 1 month's worth of advice about why they were having so many problems. This young man was Scott Randall. He was the producer of the very first video that you saw with the rap background introducing Laser 558. Scott and his media designs company still operates in New York today.
Alors, il était en contact avec quelqu'un qui lui-même connaissait une personne chargée de lancer le projet. C'est d'ailleurs elle qui a été à l'initiative de la première partie de la vidéo que vous avez vue. Et c'est à travers cette personne qu'il a donc été mis en contact avec le bureau américain de laser, et c'est à partir de là que c'est parti.
Tom, perhaps you want to tell us what was your first impression when you joined Laser, who was actually there and what was actually happening at the time?
Quelle était ta première impression quand tu es monté à bord?
Coming out for the first time, it would have been middle of June in '84. Who was out there? Jesse, Rick.
Il est arrivé,
Jesse, Rick.
il est arrivé au mois de juin.
I know that Dan Crafton was coming off because I was taking
Jesse
over
Brandon était à bord.
as operations manager at that time. And it was this glowing, bright light. It took 6 hours to get out there. And crawling alongside was quite remarkable the very first time. And it became home. The first time I stayed out there, I think 4 months with that stretch, which is a long, long time. And you learn a lot about yourself, spending 4 months at a stretch out on this world vessel like that.
La première fois, il est resté 3 mois et ça lui a fait une très très forte impression.
Charlie, the same question really again. What was your first impression when you got there? Brilliant.
Can you say Rick?
And in a lot of ways, it did mirror what Tommy was saying of, it was a very long journey, and I think it was overnight. And as we came up to the ship, it was probably first thing in the morning, 7, 8 a.m. And it's a beautiful time of day out at sea, and there was this, beautiful ship, and it was like, this is home. But the other thing I just briefly remember was telling friends just before going out, saying, well, at least unlike other radio stations, I don't have to worry about the next disc jockey being late, because how can they get held up in traffic? Unfortunately, on the day I arrived, so did the first booze delivery in about 6 or 7 weeks. They must have given us about 3 months worth of booze. A month and a half's worth got drunk that afternoon. And funny enough, during my show, the engineer, I can't remember which one, the junior, what was his name?
Bill?
No, not Bill, the junior ship's engineer, radio engineer. Anyway, he collapsed, so the day tank ran out. We went off air. And not only did we go off air, but because the day tank ran out, he had no pump, so had to pump the day tank up by hand. Holly was passed out up in the captain's cabin. And I remember going to Tommy saying, so here it was saying they'll never be late on my very first day, going up knocking on the captain's door, and couldn't, Holly, I think, eventually came down an hour and a half later in a very drunken state. And that was sort of my first impression as to, so they could have gone, up or down.
Lui aussi, lorsqu'il est arrivé à bord, il a eu l'impression d'arriver un petit peu chez lui, mais il pensait qu'il allait être accueilli, je résume un petit peu comme un dieu, que ça allait se passer très bien. Mais en fait, sa première heure de programme a été interrompue par tout un tas de problèmes techniques où il a fallu aller réveiller le capitaine, pomper pour pouvoir remettre la station sur les ondes, parce que la station n'était plus. Enfin, il a eu tout ce qu'il fallait pour pouvoir démarrer avec des étoiles.
Charlie, did you get any Spanish tenders? There's much talk about Spanish tenders. Did they ever exist? Did you ever have one?
Oui, il a été longtemps question de ravitailleurs espagnols. Est-ce qu'ils ont vraiment existé?
Absolutely. The day before I arrived, or a couple of days before I arrived, a very substantial supply ship brought food, water, and fuel from Spain. We kept a lot of it around for a very long time because it was already way out of date by the time it got to the ship anyhow, in terms of its sell-by limitations, we were supplied from friends, from Spain. Not always, but that was the theory.
And I swear some of it was horse meat.
Donc c'est parfaitement vrai, ils ont été ravitaillés à partir d'Espagne. Il y a eu d'ailleurs un lapsus révélateur, puisque avant de dire Espagne, il a dit France, donc je suppose que ça veut dire des choses, mais effectivement des ravitailleurs sont venus d'Espagne avec de la nourriture, des disques, de l'eau.
Je sais pas. I don't think so. I don't think any records ever came from Spain.
No records?
No.
But pure water?
Fuel and food and water.
Voilà, la nourriture, donc du fuel et de l'eau. It was a big tender? C'était un grand bateau?
Substantial, yeah.
Oui, relativement important. And it was still coming from Spain or also from England, from somewhere?
I chose one example and it was in fact from Spain that I...
What's the right one?
They can't get you now. There was at least one.
Donc ma question était, est-ce qu'il y en a eu d'autres pays? Il m'a dit que j'ai simplement choisi un exemple et cette fois-là c'était l'Espagne. Donc apparemment, même 16 ans après, le problème du ravitaillement reste encore assez nébuleux. Enfin, tout le monde sait qu'il y avait des bateaux qui partaient pas très loin d'ici.
Did you use the satellite link for music or for messages or needle?
Oh, yeah.
Did we use
I mean,
the satellite?
did you ever use the satellite link at all?
Once or twice, but it always, the problem you had was it was always pointing forwards towards the mast, because obviously the ship would always be into the wind. So as I remember it, every time they tried to use it, and when it would lock onto the satellite, it would lock on forward right into the mast, and we'd get a pretty heavy dose of RF. So the thing was constantly pretty much a non-starter, as I remember it.
La question était, est-ce que vous avez utilisé le module satellite qui se trouvait sur le bateau? Je pense qu'on le voit sur la photo, voilà, qui est à l'arrière. Et Charlie vient d'expliquer que de toute façon, il était juste pointé sur le mât. Donc ça posait plus d'interférences qu'autre chose. Mais ils ont réussi à l'utiliser une ou deux fois, sans plus.
Speaking of the RF, we used to go out in the evening if it was a nice night, and go out, and it had been done in the 60s, but we wanted to try it with the fluorescent tubes and go out there. We looked like Darth Vader fighting out there. Remember with the bright, with the two tubes?
Remember the little the coil? We also had a very little handy reminder. We had the antenna coil down below deck. It was a Delta bridge, a tuning coil, and they had a very unique safety hazard warning. It was just a fluorescent tube with the words danger, do not come near, or something to that effect, that just sort of was taped up, and it wasn't plugged into anything, but was lit up, and I think that kind of got the message across.
Quelques anecdotes à propos justement d'interférences. Moi, je suppose que tout le monde a déjà plus ou moins vu la vidéo de Radio Nordsee où on les voit passer devant l'antenne en train d'allumer un tube vidéo. Apparemment, ils se sont pas mal amusés à voir aussi avec ce genre de petits jeux à allumer et à éteindre des tubes avec les interférences.
Right.
Yes.
What's the response was of listeners to the station?
Pardon?
What's the response was of listeners to the station?
Did we have any response? I don't remember.
Did we have any listeners?
Josh, I think.
Quelle a été la réponse des auditeurs par rapport aux émissions?
I spent some time in our sales offices in New York, and whenever I came back across the Atlantic, would carry with me lots of mail. We received hundreds of letters every week, and they were full of not just requests and dedications, but people purchased things and they sent us postage coupons so that we could send them back stickers. It was really astonishing how much response we had.
La réponse a vraiment été énorme. À chaque fois qu'ils revenaient des États-Unis ici vers le continent, ils revenaient avec des centaines et des centaines de lettres. Les gens demandaient des dédicaces et ils mettaient dans les enveloppes des coupons, etc. pour pouvoir recevoir des choses comme des stickers ou autocollants et autres là, pour avoir un témoignage de la station. La réponse a vraiment été énorme.
Charlie, at one stage, we're going to have a big birthday party for Laser's first birthday at the Hippodrome. I believe someone been invited to home to that. How did that all come about? And then it was stopped by the DTI. Actually, tell us something about that.
Actually, that was, who did the organizing? That was more, was that?
With the land side, I don't know who did it.
Yeah, the only, actually, I don't even need that, I can, because I showed a lot according to my talks for listeners.
DTI Laser avait prévu donc de faire une célébration de leur premier anniversaire dans un hippodrome à Londres, si ma mémoire est bonne. Et c'est le DTI qui a torpillé l'affaire. Donc la question est comment ça s'est passé exactement cette affaire. Charlie dit de toute façon il n'a pas de micro, c'est vrai.
I didn't have much involvement. All I remember was going to meet Peter Stringfellow. Funny enough, if you remember when I used to do the Fever Pitch, remember there was a thing I had where you hear this crowd going, Fever Pitch, Fever Pitch, Fever Pitch. I got the Hippodrome when I was over one night to meet Stringfellow. We got the whole crowd there to chant that for me and recorded it. So that's where that came from. I don't know who set it up, but I had a couple meetings, and it was kind of neat to meet the guy. And going over to Stringfellow's a couple times. I remember one time I walked in and he was like, "Oh, Charlie, good to see you." He says, "Oh, some friends of mine here." And he says, "This is so and so and so and so, and Bob Entwistle from the Who." And it's like, you're like, "Oh, hi." What happened after that was the DTI intervened. I don't know if John, if you know any, or Tommy, I don't remember what happened after that, really.
I think, John, do you remember what happened on land? I mean, we were on the ship.
Yeah, Jane Norris was working on setting it up.
Yeah.
I don't remember the details of why it finally didn't happen, but I think that the club, run by Peter Stringfellow, was afraid there would be some action by the police, and we weren't allowed to go ahead.
Apparemment, pas grand monde a le souvenir sur la façon dont ça a été annulé, ça. Ils essayent de se souvenir un petit peu de ce qui se passait. Apparemment, ce qui est clair, c'est que ça n'était pas eux qui étaient en charge. Et personne ne sait exactement comment cette affaire-là s'est goupillée.
I was going to say, we had a far better birthday actually on the boat. As I remember, we had everybody from the Beatles to David Bowie to all the personalities of the time. So, I don't know, I'm fine, they can hear me. So, yeah.
Just for a tape.
Pardon. Just for the tape. I felt, had a far better birthday on the air because the wonders of the theater of the mind, being out there. As I remember, we had a remote broadcast up to Splinter Beach. I think you were, no, we all sort of took turns. I know I was up Splinter Beach for most of it.
We mixed it up.
And we had a giant party, and I believe, we had, of course, Linda McCartney did a little birthday greeting. And I think we had the McCartneys out on the boat, and we had David Bowie, and the Beatles reunion, and just about anybody who was anybody was on the boat, so it was a far better birthday.
Ils ont en fait reconstitué à l'antenne, pour ceux qui ont cette cassette ou qui l'ont écouté, ils avaient donc Linda McCartney, les Beatles, etc. En fait, ils ont donné l'impression que tous ces gens-là étaient à bord et qu'ils fêtaient leur anniversaire avec eux. Et effectivement, en fond sonore, on entend durant toute la journée des gens qui boivent, qui chantent, qui parlent, etc. On a l'impression d'être un petit peu dans une ambiance de kermesse.
To the birthday? Not to the birthday, but that summer was it was very nice, very hot, very warm.
Good times.
We had a good time. We had a lot of barbecues that summer in '85. A lot of us were ready to probably get off the boat at the end of that summer anyways, but that was probably one of the best times, I guess. And then the Euro siege started and everything else changed.
Yeah, the first summer it was very casual up on Splinter Beach, and then as Tommy was saying, it did sort of go through a lull. Winter sort of came, as I remember it, and I felt pretty much I had exhausted all my creativity, was pretty much ready to leave. Thought, yeah, it's been fun, but what more can I do? And then the government Margaret Thatcher's government was probably the best programming consultant I've ever had because they gave me so much inspiration that I stayed for another, I think, 6 or 9 months, and that's when radio really got to be its best.
Alors là aussi, j'essaie de faire un résumé de ce qui a été dit. Pour Tommy, cette période du premier anniversaire, il en a des souvenirs où il faisait très beau. Ils ont fait énormément de barbecue. Imaginez-vous un barbecue au milieu de la mer. I suppose you have sausages from the barbecue.
Oh, steaks.
Steaks, yeah.
Donc vous avez des steaks, des saucisses, with potatoes.
Oh, yeah.
You have the menu with the recipe.
Summertime when the living was easy.
Yeah.
Donc je demandais un petit peu ce qu'ils avaient. And wine.
Of course.
Not only water.
Yeah.
Oh, that too.
Donc apparemment il y avait également du vin. Did you drink champagne? Because when you hear the tape, the noise of bottle of champagne and so
I might
on.
have. I don't remember.
I can't remember if it was real champagne or imaginary champagne. I mean,
Donc il ne se souvient pas si c'était du vrai champagne ou si c'était de l'autre.
Just to say that the theater of the mind is quite interesting because it just reminded me of one incident for New Year's Eve, and who was the chap from California? Dave Cheney, yeah. Everybody, there was something going on. I think things were starting to kind of slide. The Marine crew was in revolt. Again, it was a situation of 3 months worth of booze. Finally, like Christmas, the Christmas stuff all arrived after Christmas.
Christmas, I remember.
3 months worth of booze was drank basically on that one night. I remember one of the Marine crew was not only passed out on the stairs, it wasn't like this, he was actually passed out so his head was down here and his feet were up there. It was a storm, it wasn't good, and Dave and I were in the studio basically debating which one of us was going to jump first because it was that bad. But every time the mic opened, it was, oh yeah, we got a great party going, but the reality was, yeah, it was, the minute the mic went off, it was this blood and I'm going to jump. No, I'm going to jump. But 2 months later, I remember, or a month later, getting on shore, and I came up to a friend, actually not even a quote-unquote anorak friend, and he said, wow, what a party you guys must have. He said, I was listening, you guys must have had one hell of a party, and had no idea what the truth was.
Donc une anecdote qui lui est revenue justement à propos de vin, etc. Pour le nouvel an à bord, la situation était dramatique. L'équipage de marins s'était plus ou moins mutiné. Et en fait, ils avaient fait à l'antenne comme si c'était l'euphorie la plus complète à bord. Et dès que le micro était coupé, ils se défoulaient en disant ce qu'ils pensaient réellement de la situation. Et quelques temps après, il rencontrait donc une personne qu'on pourrait dire un anorak, qui les avait écoutés et qui leur a dit « Qu'est-ce que vous vous êtes mis alors que le jour du Nouvel An ?» Parce que ça avait l'air d'être vraiment la Java à l'antenne, ce qui en réalité n'était pas le cas.
I think at one stage Richard Branson was invited later. Tell us something about that.
La question est, Richard Branson a essayé d'acheter laser. Qu'est-ce qu'il en est?
Richard Branson expressed some interest in the possibility of investing in laser, and as I recall, I went with Roy Lindau, the sales manager from New York, and Bumbles, John Cole, who was distinguished only because he was a social friend of the Irish investor, to meet Richard Branson on Duende, which was the flat-bottomed houseboat that Branson sometimes lived in, which is on Blomfield Road in Little Venice, not more than a 5-minute walk from where I have lived for about the past 10 years. And we met with him there.
Donc
Il a été effectivement question que Richard Branson ne rachète pas laser mais prenne une participation dans laser, et il y a effectivement eu un rendez-vous pour en discuter entre eux entre eux deux, Richard Branson lui et d'autres personnes attachées à la direction de laser. Just another question about the photos on the wall.
Sorry, about the story. No more here. Probably a pair.
Yeah, the rest of the Branson story. The discussion never got to the point of how much will you pay and are you ready to commit. And so the impression we had was that he was simply interested in considering the possibility. But Branson had been an initial advertiser on the station. We brought all of our American staff to Europe on the brand new Virgin Atlantic Airlines, and we paid for those trips with advertising, which was tremendously effective in building traffic for that airline, because at that point it was illegal for British radio stations to carry ad-libbed commercials which were spoken from the personal experience of a disc jockey. So when our disc jockeys talked about what a wonderful airline Virgin Atlantic was from their own personal experience, it really sold seats. And while Branson said, I have nothing to do with this decision, it must have been our New York sales department that decided to buy the advertising on Atlantic or on Laser 558 because it would be illegal for me to buy any advertising on this pirate station. They were effectively our largest single advertiser. But the discussion about his buying the ship never really went anywhere.
Mais la discussion sur l'achat du bateau n'a jamais été vraiment à des points concrets. C'était plutôt un intérêt de Richard Branson pour laser, ce qui n'empêche qu'il a quand même été indirectement par rapport à sa société aux États-Unis l'une des personnes qui a passé la publicité à travers, je ne sais plus exactement quel était le nom de la compagnie, Virgin Airlines, c'est ça? C'est ça, hein?
Virgin Atlantic.
Right. So that's all for Richard Branson.
He's still around, but
Il tourne toujours dans l'environnement.
He's never been able to actually buy a rock station, has he?
he missed his chance for greatness.
And Charlie, when you see the photos, what's your reaction? What you ready to talk about? Quelles sont tes réactions?
No comment.
No comment.
Gosh, they.
On the left.
Yeah. Oh,
À gauche.
I was rather skinny back then, and I noticed I'm starting to something I thought I'd never do. I'm losing my hair probably, and it's going gray.
Ouais, on est aux comparaisons physiques.
No, it's not. To me, the photos I'm enjoying the most are seeing the photos of the boat, because as Tommy said earlier, that was our home. It wasn't just a ship. It was, somewhere that was more than just a home and more than where we just worked. It's very few people have that experience of not just, maybe unless you work in an oil rig, where, the people you work with are also the people you live with, and that has its good points and its bad.
Yeah.
Il a, en fait, les souvenirs qu'il a, et il montre à nouveau la photo, c'est que tout ce qui est autour de lui, le bateau, c'était pas seulement l'endroit où il travaillait, l'endroit où il était, mais c'était vraiment sa maison. Il considérait vraiment ce bateau comme leur maison, comme un lieu exceptionnel.
Perhaps because I never lived on the ship more than 3 or 4 weeks at a time, I don't look at the history or at Laser that way. I think of it more as being the people who made it a success, whether they were on board or even in New York or wherever. And what struck me most today is the people that I lost track of, that I have fond memories of, particularly a couple of our people are no longer with us. David Lee Stone passed away a few years ago, as did Joe Vogel, who was known on the air as Mighty Joe Young, primarily an engineer. Holly Michaels, the disc jockey whom you saw on video quite often, and Tim Levensaler, our original captain from Maine, married and had children, and I haven't heard from them for a number of years, but I hope they're still together. What Laser was a combination of really talented people who all got together to have a lot of fun.
Il n'a pas la même expérience puisque le temps qu'il a passé à bord n'a jamais été très 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 long. Par contre, le souvenir qu'il a de laser, c'est une station qui a connu son succès à travers les gens qui l'ont fait. Donc il a reparlé de ceux qui étaient décédés et de gens qui revoient, et à tous ceux qui ont par leur personnalité fait le succès de laser. C'est à ça qu'il attribue le succès de laser, à la qualité des gens qui étaient sur laser.
Tommy, about the photo?
The photo, that was the trip in '85. We had an advertiser by the name of Arabian Sands in Morocco. Remember that, Charlie?
Yes. Never did that, yeah.
Yeah, ils avaient une pub pour une société qui s'appelait Arabian Sound, et qui était un centre de vacances et qui comme également de la pub qui passait pour des sports d'hiver, j'ai oublié. It was the same with
Caroline.
yeah, and you have the same thing